Changing a country isn't easy, but change is inevitable, and the choices we make today will shape our country for generations to come. That's why we've published our first book from Australia Institute Press. What's the Big Idea offers 32 ideas for a better Australia, from leading thinkers such as Bob Brown, Sally McManus, Dr. Emma Shortis, and Professor Brian Schmidt. The essays are a roadmap and a reminder that the solutions exist. Australia just needs the courage to implement them. Visit australiainstitute.org.au or follow the link in the show notes to order your copy of What's the Big Idea today.
Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents, the Australia Institute podcast where we're talking about just what the hell is going on in the economy. I'm Elinor Johnston-Leake, Senior Content Producer here at the Australia Institute, and as always, I'm talking to our Chief Economist, Greg Jericho. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Elinor.
How are you doing today?
I am wonderful.
Great to hear. Now, if anyone listening is, well, I'm assuming if you're listening, you might be a little bit of an economics nerd. You might know that we've got the budget coming up next week, which is sometimes referred to as Economist Christmas around here. And if you're just as excited as I'm sure Greg is and all of the other economists here at the Institute, then you are in fact a huge dork. And I mean that with all the love in my heart. Greg, what we like to say here at the Australia Institute is the budgets are about choices. Or as you put in your column in The Guardian this week, as your budget commandment in capital letters, everything is affordable if the government chooses to care about it. This reminded me a bit of when Josh Frydenberg, the former treasurer under the Morrison government, said everything is affordable if it's a priority. This was when he was asked about the massive cost of the AUKUS submarines, which is over $300 billion. Whether or not we actually get those submarines is now more or less up to the whims of Donald Trump. So that's a good investment. But Greg, isn't there something to be said about sensible spending? Sensible seems to be the word to use when you say we don't want to spend money. We can't actually afford it.
Sensible and prudent, living within our means.
Yeah.
Yeah, sensible is always the big line. And yeah, I got the budget commandment, kind of one from Josh Frydenberg's line, and thank you, Josh, for basically belling the cat. And it was also Julia Gillard, after she left Parliament, she gave a speech.
Budgets are about choices, Fran, and you show what you value through the choices you make.
Where she said budgets are about choices and they reveal what governments care about. And I'm like, okay, I'll put those two together and everything is important if the budget chooses to care about it. And it's just something that, you're right, we always like to sort of get front and center about budgets because it's so easy with a budget to just think, oh, you know, it is what it is. You can't fight the forces of the world. And, oh, there was a cyclone, so I guess that's hit the budget. And, oh, well, look, you know, we have to have these tax concessions in place. And, oh, we have to cut back or we have to spend on this or on that.
Yeah.
And it's like every single thing in that budget is a decision made by someone in the government and finally by the cabinet, that is what they're going to do. And whether that's to do something new or to let something that has been happening keep happening.
And something that comes up a lot in sort of post-budget analysis is who are the winners and the losers. It's kind of the big headline thing, you know, maybe it's like young people winners, I don't know, women losers, whatever.
Young people are never winners. I'm just going to say that I don't think there's ever been a media report after the budget saying, young people, winners.
Yeah.
Old people, people with houses,
rich
you're
people,
losers.
Yeah.
No, it's the young people renting and struggling to get a house. You're the winners.
Yeah.
No,
is this too simplistic a way of looking at it?
Oh, look, it is. Every single media outlet does it because while it is incredibly simplistic, everyone reads those columns because most people are not going to be tuning into Jim Chalmers' speech next Tuesday night. I won't be because I will have spent the previous 6 hours or so in the budget lockup where I would have already read the speech and analysed all the budget. And so when Jim Chalmers is speaking, I'll be madly publishing stuff and getting things going. And so it's sort of always on there in the background. And for those of you wondering, the budget lockup not a great time of excitement or fun. It's actually a bit of a punish, really.
Oh.
So I don't know about Christmas for economists. It's
Okay.
actually
I'm
not
sorry.
something, especially in March. It's far too early.
The
I'm not
Ides
ready
of
for it
March
yet.
for
May,
economists.
I'm there. It's cold.
Yeah.
Everything's it's still bloody warm here in Canberra. I'm wearing t-shirts. What the hell's going on? Almost like this climate is changing or something. I don't know. But yeah, it's always about winners and losers. But one of the problems with that is it kind of is just focused on, again, new things. So, if something is done that might give someone some money, then they're a winner. And it's kind of hard to sort of pick the losers other than, something didn't happen to you.
Mm.
And yes, that can be people on job seeker. Sorry, you're a loser. You didn't get any increase. But we never seem to say things like, gas companies, you're still winning because they haven't changed the royalty regime or instituted a national royalty regime or changed the PRT rules. Or rich people, you're really lucky because they haven't changed the capital gains tax discount or the superannuation tax concessions. They're all just taken as, they're just locked in, they're baked into the budget
It might be
figures.
sort of the same articles year after year if that were the case.
Yeah, rich people, you're still winning.
Yep.
Poor people, you're still losing. Yeah, so generally we certainly here at the Institute, when we put out all our budget analysis, try to stick away from the winners and losers because, one, we are not a media company. We're not here just to get cheap hits. But also, it often kind of misses a lot of what is going on and has that assumption that, these things that are set in place, that's not anyone winning or losing. That's just how the tax system must be. And we're like, no, it ain't.
Yeah.
The budget is back in the black and Australia is back on track. Fellow members, the days of borrow and spend must come to an end.
The Albanese Labor government has delivered a second consecutive budget surplus.
Look, I think a surplus in the conditions that Australia finds itself is the responsible thing to do.
This is a powerful demonstration of our responsible economic management.
Another sort of big figure that always tends to appear in the post-budget headlines is the surplus or the deficit number. So generally it's kind of framed as surplus good, deficit bad. Surplus means good, sensible economic management. Deficit equals reckless spending, poor economic management. Is this really fair though?
Have you been working in a media company? You are really got those headlines down pat. Yeah. I mean, surplus good, deficit bad is basically the stock standard thing. And it's a total crock. I mean, and we really need to get away from this thinking because remember, what is a budget surplus? A budget surplus is just the government has taken in more tax from us, from Australians, than it is spending. So we've given them a lot of money and they said, thanks. We won't give all of that back. We'll give some of that back, 90% of it back. And it's like, we're meant to celebrate that? What? Hang on, I paid my taxes so that I'll get government services and there'll be benefits that'll help society. You're keeping 10% of it? What's going on there? And it's this whole line of thinking that governments are kind of like a company and a surplus is a profit.
Yeah.
It's not a profit. You don't get a nice dividend payout if we have a surplus. They don't go, we've got a $20 billion surplus. Well, let's divide that by every taxpayer and give you a share. No, that's not how it works. We really need to stop thinking about deficit's bad, surplus good, because, think about it during the pandemic. We had massive record, probably we'll never see again in our lifetime. Hopefully we'll never see again in our lifetime size deficits. I mean, during the pandemic, we had those massive deficits. One, because a lot of people would stop working, businesses that shut, and the government, as a result, one, was getting a lot less tax revenue in, but also they needed to spend a lot of money to keep the economy going and also to do things like buy some vaccines that they needed to spend a lot of money. If they had said, no, we need a surplus is good, we're talking Great Depression kind of stuff here, where there'd be soup kitchens and lines up of people trying to, buy loaves of bread or something because we'd all be struggling. Governments need to sometimes run a deficit because we actually need the government to spend more than it is taking from us, because it needs to help the economy going. If the economy is weak, a deficit's pretty good. If the economy is going really strong, maybe a surplus is okay. Maybe.
So surpluses can be good sometimes?
Well, I mean, there haven't been many occasions where you can say that. Maybe during the mining boom years when we really were getting stonks of tax revenue coming in. And to be honest, household incomes were rising pretty fast. Most people, or on average, the economy was going pretty hot. And if you're running a deficit there, it's almost like the government saying, oh, it's not running hot enough. We've got to keep pumping more in the economy. And then inflation would have gone pretty bad. So running a surplus then was kind of sensible. But again, think about what that was. That was a 1 in 100-year mining boom.
Yeah.
It was not normal. And yet we're trapped into thinking, oh, that was normal. We should always be running a surplus. And it's like, no. And in fact, right now, when you look at, we've been talking about the economy and how, GDP, per capita recessions and all that. It's kind of, well, that's not a strong economy.
No.
And if it's not a strong economy, why would you run a surplus? Because remember, a surplus is the government taking more money from us, or to put it another way, taking more money out of the economy, because we could have spent those taxes. Instead, we're giving them to the government. So they're taking more money out of the economy than they're putting back into the economy. So that kind of a surplus slows the economy. Does anyone really think Australia's economy at the moment needs to be slowed?
Not if you've been
really.
listening to the podcast, for sure.
So we know next Tuesday there's going to be a budget deficit. Jim Chalmers has already highlighted it. Pretty much this was not in doubt, but I think he's put it out just to kill off any stories of saying, oh, will there be a surprise surplus? And it's like, no, there's not going to be a surprise surplus. But, again, also think about what the budget is. It is a forecast of what's going to happen in the next year and the next 3 years after that. And it's always wrong.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned already, the cyclone Alfred, Jim Chalmers mentioned that it's going to cost $1.2 billion to clean up. And I'm sure due to climate change, we're only going to see more and more of those expensive and devastating natural disasters. And as our regular listeners will know, there's been a lot of uncertainty in global economic.
You can't just say Trump.
I was going to get there. Trump and his tariffs left and right for really no apparent reason. Well, no sensible reason, I suppose.
Yeah, no sensible reason.
Yeah. All in all, Greg, these are really weird, unusual, uncertain times. How does the government sort of take that into account when they are planning the budget?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, forecasting budgets, and the reason why the numbers are wrong is because it's a forecast and there are a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking if you forecast the iron ore price, about $5 different either way, that's kind of $1 billion to hit to the budget, either better or worse, in terms of revenue. And, iron ore prices do move up and down a fair bit over the course of a year. And, other things like exchange rates, oil prices, all of this stuff. And then you've got, okay, back in December, no one was thinking America's economy was about to fall over. Now, as we talked a couple of weeks ago, there is a strong likelihood of it.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump, I was reading today, Donald Trump and his loonies are thinking going even harder on a lot more tariffs, like almost going across the board. And this is not going to be good for the world economy. And Australia is part of the world economy. A lot of the people we trade to are in the world. We're not trading with Venus
them,
or Mars.
Yeah.
And so when the global economy tanks, we're swept up in that. So it's very tough if you're in Treasury right now and you're forecasting, okay, we pretty much can forecast, the domestic economy a bit, but a lot of things in that domestic economy are affected by what's happening overseas, what's happening with Chinese demand, what's happening with American demand, and, how that affects. And so, I really don't envy them at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, we had just earlier this week, the OECD came out with its sort of annual report, and its forecasts for Australian economic growth were lower than the Reserve Bank had just in February, that the government had back in December. And, this isn't a long time between estimates, and yet there's some pretty significant changes because you got a loony in the White House, or let's just call him a fascist in the White House, who it's becoming illegal to criticize, and who just thinks tariffs are great, trashing the economy is okay so long as the people he likes do okay. I don't know. It's all a bit weird, but there's this really cool organization called the Economic Policy Uncertainty Organization. That's basically their name, Economic Policy Uncertainty. Imagine saying, what do you do? Well, I work for Economic Policy Uncertainty. You sure about that? Well,
Such a dad joke. Oh, my God.
But anyway, what they do is every day, pretty much, they've got this really cool sort of index where they chart all the stories in major newspapers and media organizations around the world looking for keywords of uncertainty, basically just when there's reports, and we're talking sort of economic and political reports. Are there terms of uncertainty being mentioned a lot in these things? And they basically chart them. And it's a very good index because, they go back now to sort of the 1980s, and you can see, that was September 11. Oh, that was the GFC height. Oh, that was Brexit. That was Trump, and that was the pandemic. And their latest one, which only goes up to January, so it hasn't even got to the February figures yet, is that there is as much global uncertainty about economic policy as there was right at the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Which you think, okay, a pandemic, you can understand being really unclear about what the hell is going to happen.
Yeah, we don't have too many of those.
Yeah, and we certainly don't really have one right now. We're not, if you sort of took out Trump, nothing much is, apart from wars and genocide and things like that, But in terms of uncertainty, there's only one thing happening, and that's Trump, and he's causing more uncertainty now than the pandemic, which is so Trump is as bad as the pandemic when it comes to trying to forecast what the hell is going to happen. So good luck with the Treasury boffins trying to work out the figures for the budget. I wouldn't be surprised, because budgets are normally in May. This one's coming a couple months earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if whoever wins the election, there might be an early update, maybe in October. Whether it's a new budget like they did in 22, or they just do an update of the figures, because I think these figures could get out of date very quickly, just because who the heck knows what's Trump going to do.
You get to sit in another budget lockup.
No.
Yay.
No.
So, Greg, I'm sure that this is a pretty long list of things, but what is on your wish list for the budget? Keeping in mind that, as Frydenberg said, everything is affordable if it's a priority.
Yeah, long list.
Maybe just the top things.
Well, I mean, coincidentally, what a very good question, Elinor, because coincidentally today the Australian Institute has put out kind of our tax agenda for what we think, not only for the budget, but for the next parliament, because whoever wins, whether Dutton gets up or Albanese scrapes over the line or whatever, there are a lot of demands on governments for a lot of services, a lot of infrastructure stuff. It doesn't matter who's going to be there. You're going to need revenue. And one of the things we at the Australian Institute always sort of bang on about, and certainly around budget times, is reminding everybody that we're a very low taxing nation. Really low taxing nation. One of the lowest taxing nations in the OECD, so all advanced economies. Pretty much there's us. Below us is like the USA, Switzerland, and some, fairly poor nations. And above us is everyone else. We're about sixth lowest.
Yeah.
Or to put it in context, if we just raised enough revenue to make us the average, right on the average, which would put us sort of in line with Canada and New Zealand, we'd be raising $135 billion extra a year.
Wow, that's like a third of the AUKUS submarine budget.
Exactly. So what the Australian Institute did was we're like, okay, well, much as we'd love to be able to raise an extra $135 billion, probably politically it's not feasible at the moment. So we came up with sort of 5 areas where we see there's great distortions or inequity in the tax system that if we fix them or at least improve them, we can raise more revenue and actually then be able to spend it. And so we looked at things like, let's just end fossil fuel subsidies. Why are we subsidizing fossil fuels when climate is changing and fossil fuels are causing that? So let's stop that. Let's make big gas companies actually pay for their gas, because right now they're getting it for free. They're shipping it off to Japan and Korea and wherever, and we're getting bugger all for it. They're not really paying much tax, and they're certainly not paying any royalties for it. So let's make them pay. We've talked about in the past about housing. Housing last week, housing was
we
terrible.
We did talk about housing
And
a lot.
what have we talked about? The capital gains tax discount, negative gearing that is just fueling speculation in the housing market. Well, let's improve that. Then there's the superannuation tax concessions we've also talked about, where we give tax concessions for super to encourage people to save for their retirement so they're not going to be on the age pension. And yet pretty much almost, we're talking sort of just about half of those tax concessions are going to the richest 10% who are never going to be on the age pension. So why are we giving them a tax break we're just giving them a tax break because, hey, you're rich, you look like you need more money, And then also let's tax things that kind of are bad for us, or that actually we kind of do like to say, you subsidize good things, tax bad things. There's, exemptions on luxury car tax for big dumb utes. There's, we could be taxing use of plastics. The ALP a couple elections ago had a policy trying to limit the amount you could claim for managing your tax affairs. Because when you look at millionaires and extremely rich people who end up paying no tax, one of the reasons they do that is they spend a lot of money paying tax accountants and tax lawyers so that they can find all the loopholes and everything.
Yeah.
And not only that, and you think, oh, well, that's fine, but that's actually itself a tax deduction.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's so fun.
Now, most people spend about $300 if they go to a tax accountant and get it done. It's about $300, and the next year you can claim that as managing your tax affairs. So we were like, well, let's limit it at $3,000 because
that's pretty generous.
That kind of gets about everyone except for the very richest, and also those who are spending a lot of money to avoid paying tax.
Yeah.
So, if we do that, it doesn't raise much money, but it also directly from that sort of limiting the thing, but it also stops this abuse of our tax system. So what we did was we looked at all those sort of 5 areas, and we sort of did a bit of a range of, okay, here's sort of the small little step things you could do. Like your grandfather negative gearing, you limit it. You don't get rid of it completely, or you just sort of limit the capital gains, or you reduce the tax concessions and things like that. And we did a range from sort of the smallest steps to, hey, let's just get rid of these distortions and actually do something for real. And we basically came up with the minimum level. If you just did the minimum and all those 5 things, you're still going to raise about $11.8 billion.
Nice. That's nothing to sneer at.
Exactly. And if you did the most, you're looking at about 62 to 63 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then it was like, and then I because I was one of the people writing this report, I then was tasked with the really fun thing of let's spend that money.
Tax is good. Tax is an investment in our society, and it is no accident that the highest taxed countries in the world are also the richest, most productive and happiest countries in the world.
With $11 billion, we could increase JobSeeker by $100 a week.
Yeah. Wow.
We could increase the age pension, the disability support pension, carer pensions by $26.50 a week. And the reason we do that less is they're already a lot higher than the job seekers. So it's, we could increase government spending on public schools, higher education, vocational education, and on housing expenditure, all by 10%, everyone by 10%. And that would cost $11 billion.
Is that all together?
Yeah, all together doing
you could buy all of that.
All of those things you could do.
My gosh.
Or if you chose not to do those things, you could employ about 70,000 more nurses, teachers, carers. It's so much that you wouldn't do it because we probably don't have the skills and people actually to do it. But it's
The US is probably going to be shedding some soon.
And then the real fun thing, let's spend $62.8 billion.
Yeah.
All right. So this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're raising JobSeeker by $211 to get it to $600 per week.
Yep.
We're raising the age pension by $110.50 a week. That gets it to $625 a week. We're doing the same for the disability support pension, same for carer payments, same for the parenting payment, and we're raising the parenting payment partnered by sort of an equivalent amount. Then we're doubling the expenditure on public schools. We're doubling the expenditure on higher education, doubling the expenditure on vocational education, doubling the expenditure on housing, doubling the expenditure on ABC and SBS, doubling the expenditure on aged care quality to ensure that we don't have the abuses in the aged care system, doubling the expenditure on Aboriginal and Torres Strait health, increasing by 500% the amount spent on dental services. All of those combine, $62.7 billion.
Yeah.
I mean...
See, when I asked if you're a wish list, I didn't think it was going to be this detailed. But
and
those
again,
are all good things.
We're not out there saying, yes, the government should double the spending on public schools. Or, well, I probably am saying that. But, I'm not expecting it, and I'm not saying we need to spend it by, I think it'd be very good. Same with doubling expenditure on higher education, given that we can see what's happening with research in America at the moment, with researching being cut to shreds because it has trans somewhere hidden in one of the documents, even if it's not talking about transgender.
Or potentially cancer curing
cancer
mRNA
research
vaccines
because there's something to do with diversity. It's been cut. All of those researchers would like to go somewhere where there's some, sanity. I say let's increase funding for research in higher education. Not only does our local higher education system need it, but let's bring them on over. There is kind of a precedent for doing this kind of thing. America did it 1930s and 40s. I can't quite remember where all of those scientists were coming from, where they were escaping, what kind of regime, but we should be doing it. I mean, this is one thing that Trump doesn't get, is that all of that spending, which he thinks is, it's spending on, diversity and wokeness, is actually stuff that makes America the center of research in the world, and they get the benefits. Well, if he doesn't want them, come over here. So, but to do that, we probably are going to need some more revenue. Well, I'm saying it's
look
there.
At the list.
And it's a case of, as we say, that the $63 billion, that's huge. But even that 11 or 12 billion more, and if you said we're going to increase this, and this, that would be one of the most ambitious and bold sort of policy agendas we've seen from a government in a very long time. And we're also saying, look, it's not like you're doing anything all that bold on the revenue side. You're just making gas pay. You're getting rid of fossil fuel subsidies. You're stopping giving as big of a concession to the richest for superannuation. You're winding back some of those capital gains tax discounts. These are not things that are radical communist kind of stuff. It's already stuff that's in the political debate.
Yeah, we just need the ambition.
We need the ambition,
and
I think always one of those things when you're talking about tax, you can't just say, "Oh, we're doing this so that we can run a surplus." I mean, who cares? Big war, what a waste of your resources.
Yeah.
Instead, say, hey, if we do this, look at what we can do. Look at the better Australia we can have. That, to me, is something a sort of a competent politician surely can sell. But you got to have the ambition. So hopefully people read our report and get some ambition.
If you're interested in seeing Greg's full wish list, really. Well, what was the name of the report? Sorry.
The report is called Raising Revenue Right.
Raising Revenue Right. Yeah. Look on our website.
It's on our website.
Or in the show notes. Yeah, you can find it there.
It's all there. Got lots of nice tables. We purposefully did it in a really kind of short doc. It's about 12 pages or so, but a lot of those pages are just tables with this is how much you could raise, this is how much you could spend. There's not a lot of jargon or anything. We really want it to be kind of clear so that you could basically look at this document and the next time you hearing someone, or if you go to a town hall where a politician is speaking and they say, oh, well, we've got to live within our means, we're there, we can't fund everything. It's like, well, you could fund some things, as Richard Dennis likes saying, yeah, we're a rich country. We can't fund everything, but we can fund anything. It's just, what do we choose to fund? And the problem and the reason why we put out the tax paper is because too often governments say, oh, well, this is all the tax we got. And we go, is it really? There's actually, you're leaving a lot of tax on the table there. And a lot of that tax you're leaving on the table is going to profitable companies and extremely rich people who are kind of abusing the tax system. We say, maybe stop it and, hey, fund some schools.
Yeah, sounds great to me. Well, yeah, fingers crossed for maybe not. I'm not expecting any, kind of great ambition in that way in the next budget, but look, fingers crossed for a little bit.
Don't end on a downer. We finally were going to end on a positive note here, Elinor. You're killing me.
I'm sorry. Positive note, Greg gets to sit in a lockup for like 6 hours and everyone can bask in his misery.
You're going to be one of the first people I see when I get out of the
I'm
lockup.
staying late on that weekend as well. I don't know why.
You're going to be the victim of all my misery after that. That's 6 hours of pent-up misery.
Aren't I always? Well, thank you, Greg. I think that's probably all we've got time for today.
I think it is, Elinor. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will be back with another Dollars and Cents, and we will be doing the wash-up of the budget, which is out next Tuesday. So we'll be able to give you all of the coverage, find out what's in there. If there's anything nasty, probably not, because not many governments put nasty things in 6 weeks from an election, but who knows? But we will have all the coverage, so please come back then and listen to us. But this episode of Dollars and Cents was recorded on the 20th of March, and some things may have changed, although not much, because it was all predictions about things. Who knows? Maybe our predictions of things have changed. If you'd like to see all the graphs about just how uncertain the world is because of Donald Trump, go read my article on the Guardian Australia site, which has all of the graphs, all of the tables, and all of the words you need to know about talking about a budget. For more research about budgets, including our Raise Revenue Right paper, please go to our website, which is at australiainstitute.org.au. My Blue Sky handle, and the handle I use everywhere else, is at GrogScammer. Elinor's is at Elinor Johnston Leak.
Sure is.
It is. Leak, by the way, not...
No, it's Leek.
Is it? Oh,
yeah, like the vegetable.
It is like the vegetable, not like the...
Not the...
water tap dripping. Yeah. Our music, as always, is by Blue Dot Sessions. Everyone, have a great week. We will see you all next week after the budget. Bye.
See ya.